For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure. The Pybus Public Market is pleased to offer a series of unique and fun classes for the Wenatchee Valley community. Classes are taught by local volunteers with an interest and aptitude in the subjects that they teach.
So yes, I'm Tamara, Steffen. I work for Confluence Health. I'm the Advanced Care Planning Program Coordinator for Confluence Health. And my background is in social work. I've been working with Confluence Health for almost 8 years, and I spent 5 of those at the hospital. And while I was there, I discovered the incredible need for what we're about to share tonight. And so I'm very happy to have been in this position for a couple of years and being able to share this information. So Jenny and I co-present this. I have flyers back there for our monthly meeting. So we do something very, very similar the first Tuesday of every month. So if you like what you hear, or you want to hear more, or you want to share it with others, is that okay volume? It seemed like it got loud all of a sudden. Please take another flyer, and so we'd like to have that. And then we'll share a little bit more as we go. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along and interrupt us and add your stories if you'd like, because we just want to keep us all connected as we go. And Jenny, I'll have you introduce yourself.
My name's Ginny Heintz. I've worked in kind of end-of-life issues all of my career, mainly in hospice, home health, and now one of the palliative care coordinators with Confluence Health. I applaud you from coming out here tonight. It's not the hot topic for social conversation, but so admire you gathering the information so that you can make decisions in your future about healthcare decisions and share your story. I'm all about the story of what kind of brings meaning to your life and kind of matching healthcare to what brings meaning to your life.
So we'll give you, I love this quote: planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it right now. And so that's really what we're going to focus on tonight. And we'll go forward and take a peek at just kind of an overview. You can just go quick through that. We'll give you an overview of advanced care planning. We're going to really talk about how to select a healthcare agent, reflect on your values and beliefs, and we want to make sure we give you time to think about that. We're going to discover how to express your wishes, and then we will help you know how to share your plan. So we'll give you some of that. I want to give you an overview or a definition of advanced care planning so you kind of know where our brains are in this. Advanced care planning really is a process. It's a process of discovering and recording what's important to you in life, your values and your preferences, in order to inform and guide future healthcare decisions. So that's kind of the focus of what we're going to be talking about. And here's why we do it. This was part of a nationwide survey done through a couple different organizations, and asking people about advanced care planning. So 90% of the people surveyed said that talking to your loved ones about end-of-life care is important, but only 27% have actually done it. You can just go kind of quick. People say it's important to put their wishes in writing, but only 23% have actually done it. 70% of the people surveyed prefer to die at home, but 70% of the people surveyed end up dying in a nursing home or a hospital. There's an 8.8 greater likelihood of prolonged grief if a loved one dies in the ICU versus home with hospice. And there's 5 times greater likelihood of post-traumatic stress disorder if a loved one dies in the ICU versus home with hospice. And this is really why we want to do this and why I became so passionate about that. It's that crisis prevention, because we want people to be present emotionally, spiritually, and physically for their loved ones when there is a sudden accident or event or something that causes the need for advanced care planning to be emergently put into place. So it's avoiding these things and helping you help your loved ones avoid this kind of trauma that we're talking about here. So these are kind of the real important things that we want to talk about. It says all adults should consider this. So a lot of folks really think advanced care planning is for those who are advanced in age. It's really not. It's for everybody who woke up and got in the car in the morning. You're potentially a victim of an accident. You're potentially in that car with someone you love who may be your natural spokesperson. And so advanced care planning really is for all adults. We want to help you understand how to choose your healthcare agent. And that's kind of the common term we use for something that people may have heard, like a durable power of attorney for healthcare, or your POA, we sometimes use that term, or your power of attorney. But healthcare agent is really that role that we're talking about. Your values and beliefs impact your future decisions, and Jenny will help kind of elaborate on that with you. And then what kind of future healthcare do you want if you're not able to speak for yourself?
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I've learned that Confluence Health is huge, and to integrate something into your care plan is a great challenge. So we're starting clinic by clinic and provider by provider group to get them to be able to respond to that better. So right now we have 2 clinics that are trialing this, and within that clinic we have trained nurses who are able to sit down and do follow-up appointments with their patients to be able to do this. So I'm glad you're still here, and this is the other alternative that we're doing in the meantime, is making sure that we're getting out to the community and that we have our regular workshop. Well, how did you find out about this then? Was it a Pybus mailing, or? Oh, because oh yeah, so internally, yeah. So I hope more and more to be able to have people not have that experience, and so that they will know what to do, because that should never be a yes or no, thank you, and move on. We would never do that if you had high blood pressure. So I don't want them to do that if you don't have an advanced care planning document on file. So the first priority really is choosing that healthcare agent. And some of the things we want you to kind of think about in choosing a healthcare agent is that important element of having the conversation. So where did it all go? Go ahead, one more. 2 more. So how many of you have who you think might be your healthcare agent here today? So good, a lot of you. And we'll tell you a little bit more about who that person might be, and maybe you'll think about that choice. A lot of people choose direct family members, and we'll kind of talk about how you pick those people. But it really is the key to advanced care planning, as having a meaningful conversation with your healthcare agent or your potential healthcare agent. And we'll give you some ideas of what to talk about. So how you pick that person, there's a couple of categories. First of all, that person must be willing to serve in this role. There is nothing in the documents that we'll share with you that makes them commit to that in writing, so it really is on you to have that conversation, or with those of us who might help you with that. So first of all, a willing person is very important to have them involved. The next is they must be able to understand and advocate for what you would want. And so sometimes that makes people kind of reset, like you might not want your spouse to do that, because maybe they can't advocate for what you would want. Maybe that's just too hard for them, and maybe somebody else should be the right person. Maybe a daughter for a mother, or a mother for a daughter, they can't do that role either. So really being able to speak for what you would want and not what they would want. And that's sometimes tough and really needs to be a thoughtful decision. And then somebody that's able to handle tough decisions at difficult times. So I always think about someone who can stand up to those white coats in the room that are standing around the hospital bed and say, hold on, that's not what she would want. Or wait a minute, I know exactly what she would want. We had this conversation. So it needs to be somebody that can handle those difficult times and be able to kind of stand up in those. So those are really 3 important categories in thinking about who you're choosing for your healthcare agent. Any thoughts or questions or input on that? The reason why it's important to have that conversation is we know that a physician in the emergency room, in the ICU, they're going to talk to a person before they consult a piece of paper. So we are going to help you understand how to get this information on writing, make sure that writing is meaningful, but we also really want to encourage you that your healthcare agent, if that person is not present today and doesn't have the opportunity to hear what we're sharing or to have a great conversation with you, that person really needs to be informed, because that's who they're going to be talking to, is that designated healthcare agent. The form is important, but the conversation is critical. So in Washington State, here's the kind of the hierarchy of what happens if a healthcare agent is not selected, just so you know kind of the legal hierarchy. So by statute, first of all, there's a court-appointed guardian. So you'd know if there was a guardian involved in your life. That would be done by court, and typically it's a pretty elaborate process. The next is an individual, if any, to whom the patient has given a durable power of attorney that encompasses the authority to make healthcare decisions. So that's the document that you have here. It also could be something that you've done with an attorney called a durable power of attorney for healthcare. So that person that's legally designated trumps everybody else. And then the next person would be your legal partner or spouse. So even if you have a legal partner, but you have a durable power of attorney in place, the healthcare agent becomes the spokesperson over the spouse if that person wasn't the healthcare agent. And then next, if none of those are available, then the children of the patient, who are at least 18 years of age. And if no children, then the parents, if they're still living, of the patient. And if they're not there, then all the adult brothers and sisters of the patient. And if you can advance it a couple. What's so challenging is that in all of those categories where there's more than one person, they all have to agree. So that means if it's your parents and they're still living, they all have to agree. Or maybe even more difficult is if your children all have to agree on what you would want. Or it has to be all your siblings all have to agree on what you would want. And that can become very challenging, which is why it's so important to designate a primary person, again, so you can alleviate the trauma that might happen in that kind of difficult time. And it's really just to avoid that family feud and kind of get it in advance.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
How do you talk about it? I kind of like this, you know. Studies show that parents wait too long to talk about the birds and the bees. There's been a lot of babies born by not talking about the birds and the bees. And even without the advanced care planning signed, we all are mortal beings and we will be dying sometime. So even if we talk about it, doesn't mean that we're going to die right away. But we're probably going to die better if we do talk about it, and we're probably going to have children better if we do talk about it. So kind of making a plan to talk. Planning is bringing the future into the present. So the present, we'll talk about it now, but the future might be a half an hour from now for some of us, getting in a car. And I was just telling somebody that I had been hit by a drunk driver. Fortunately, I wasn't maimed, but I could be. And then who is going to speak on my behalf? Not the way they would like to speak about who they think I am, but really bringing my voice to the decisions, not theirs. So that's where it kind of gets complicated about who you choose. And so Tamara said this, really talking is more important than the forms. But putting it down, that story or those people's names are equally kind of like steroids of that conversation, if you will. And the bottom line is Tamara and I worked together in the ICU when people would come in and they didn't have a power of attorney, or they did have a power of attorney documented, but they didn't know they were the power of attorney, or they said, yes, we were the power of attorney, but we didn't talk about what mom or dad or brothers or sisters wanted. So here you are, caught off guard, and then what? All the physicians and nurses and social workers are wondering what we should do for this person. So having the conversation decreases the anxiety in the future. There's a great study that shows that when people are seriously ill, they want to make their own decisions. They want to not be a burden to their family. If you have the conversation, it's probably the best gift you can give your family. A lot of the conversations that I have every day is asking people, what's a good day look like for you? What are we kind of fighting for with your cancer treatments or your heart disease, or you're going into a major heart surgery? What does a good day look like for you? Instead of maybe a statistical analysis of 1,000 patients and what the outcome was. The main statistic that matters is you. And what is that? So that would be questions that you would converse with your power of attorney about. Hey, I don't know if you know it, but having a good day is being able to read a book, being able to pick up a phone and talk to my children from afar, being able to have a dinner over. I really like apple pie with ice cream a la mode. That's important for me. That may seem kind of silly, but I'll tell you, the emergency room doctor can put into your words, based on the disease, that maybe mom or dad or brother or sister will not be able to have apple pie a la mode again. And what does that feel like? Grandma with a major stroke might not be able to pick the grandchild up on her lap anymore and read a book. So there's the statistics I like. You're the expert of you, and you need to share it with your power of attorney for healthcare. And then again, I think we've already addressed that. What brings meaning to your life? Okay. Any questions so far? Kind of a different spin on maybe how you've done your advanced care planning in a legal office. So then we're going to be kind of specific on an example here of what future medical care would you or would you not want? And there's an example coming up. Not quite. Okay, so consider what medical care would you want or not want in your future. Is there just a few decisions that one needs to make in the buffet table of healthcare these days? I call it kind of the ology of healthcare. You might see the neurologist, the pulmonologist, the cardiologist, the oncologist, the radiation oncologist. And even though we have electronic medical records, they don't seem to really talk to one another as easily as when you had an old family doctor who maybe had a son on a baseball team right along with you and really knew the grandparents and the children and the grandchildren. And it didn't take all of this education on how to navigate healthcare. So it's become very complicated, and that's why it's called Pybus University, because it really does take a PhD level to get through healthcare these days. So kind of talk to your healthcare agent about what kind of outcomes are acceptable for you. There was a gentleman that I saw, 90 years old. He lived a long time, the last 10 years of his life, really sleeping majority of the day, 20, 22 hours a day. I'm not quite sure how he survived, but he was quite congenial, and he was from Arkansas, and I asked him, what does a good day look like for you? In that southern drawl, he says, well, if I can't have cornbread and pudding with molasses over the top, I'm done. Well, when you think of that physiologically, that means if he can't eat, that's not a good day for him. And to be able to eat, you usually have to be able to talk, so that wouldn't be a good day for him. So if he had a major stroke and the physician is saying, you're not going to be able to eat, you're not going to be able to talk again, what would you want us to focus on? And he said, I have a really good faith, just allow nature to take its course. So it's really kind of simplifying who we are as a human being, kind of emotionally, spiritually, the meaning of life, and matching it with what healthcare may or may not be able to offer you. Then you have some kind of power, if you will, as experts, navigating the physician. And just realize you really know you more than they know you. But here's the scenario that all of us, I wish, when 16-year-olds got their license and they sign up for organ donation, I think that's a push. I think you should be at least 18 to be able to sign that up, because it's not informed consent of what all that means. So here's the scenario. A sudden event. This would be something to discuss with your healthcare agent. A sudden event, such as a car accident or an illness, left you unable to communicate. So you could not talk, you're not processing, you're not thinking. You might be awake, but you can't say yes or no, up or down. You are receiving all the care needed to keep you alive, which typically means you're in the intensive care unit. You might be on a breathing machine. You'd be on all the cardiac medications intravenously. You might be on all the antibiotics that need to be given. You might need dialysis for kidneys occasionally. Well, we're trying to get you better. You're receiving all the care needed to keep you alive. The doctors, and it's not just one doctor, they're in an intensive care unit, there may be 4 or 5 doctors that are meeting with you and your family. The doctors believe there is little chance that you will ever recover the ability to know who you are or who you are with. Question to pose to tell your healthcare agent, a couple of them. Would you want to continue medical treatment to keep you alive? Or would you want to stop medical treatment that keeps you alive? Either way, let's make sure you're comfortable as well. So, kind of dire situations, but can you see where you could tie in that meaning of life and what brings joy in your life? We in healthcare are going to listen to your power of attorney for healthcare. We rarely trump that person. We will keep things going until somebody decides differently. So as far as worrying that the doctors are going to stop something or they're going to trump my power of attorney for healthcare, I have not seen that happen. We spend a lot of time talking with families, maybe all of the families. Sometimes there's been 15, 20 in a room every day with a variety of physicians, the intensive care doctor, the pulmonary doctor, the cardiologist, the surgeon. So it really is a team focus, trying to surround the family, trying to make the best decisions that make sense for them and for the person that they're speaking for on their behalf.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
Have a fun video you'd like to see featured on NCW Life? Email us at newsphotos@ncwlife.com.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
Kind of jumping a little bit to CPR. This is kind of a touchy subject. Most people, how many have been trained or know a little bit about CPR? How many people think it's quite effective or don't know?
I think it's effective on average.
Okay. Every year since I've been a nurse, I've been mandated to make sure that I am certified in CPR training. All those years, 35 years, I never was taught the effectiveness of it. Every other thing I've learned in healthcare, I learned about the effectiveness of a certain procedure. In your pamphlet, or your folder, you don't have to get it out now, but it has to do with good studies about the effectiveness of CPR. CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And what we know is if say you're in the hospital for a knee repair, and sometimes when you have orthopedic surgery, you have risk for a clot, and that clot can move and stop your heart. If your heart stops, that means you've died in the hospital. And we do CPR where we push on your chest, potentially break your ribs, we have about a 22% chance in the hospital. To get you out of the hospital, you will probably need to be in a rehab for a while to get you back home. If it is outside of the hospital, and these statistics aren't here as much, but it does come from research from the Respecting Choice out of La Crosse, Wisconsin, who's done huge research in this topic. If you have metastatic cancer, 0% chance of us getting you back. It's not that the heart stops because of the heart. It stops because of the body's overwhelming work to deal with the cancer. If you're over 70 with some comorbidities, it's called, maybe you have some heart disease, maybe you have some lung disease, maybe you have some kidney, then it's about 4% chance in the hospital. So again, what are we fighting for? We are all for fighting for whatever you want, because statistics, again, are statistics. The statistic that matters is you. So that's something to kind of think about, especially if you might have, if a doctor says you might have less than a year to live. That would be a pretty good discussion to have with your physician, is about resuscitation. Does that kind of surprise you, those statistics? And then some people will tell me, well, let's just give it a start. You know, kind of like jumping a battery of a car. And when you do Hollywood studies, 80% of the people the next day they're at their office with lipstick on, ready to go to work. That's not true. You will be in the intensive care for some time, then maybe the medical floor for some time, and then rehab for some time. And we all know of those who have survived CPR. So it's always worth the discussion with your physician. You are entitled to questions of things you don't know. The average length of a physician's visit is probably 10, 15 minutes, and you can only talk about one thing. So again, and then this other one is a new thing. I read about it today. Tamara talked to me. It's another acronym, AND, A-N-D, sorry. Allow natural death. And that's going to be kind of a new acronym that we might be using, which might be don't do tube feedings, don't do CPR, don't do intubation on a ventilator and such. Well, all of that's kind of dry subject for me. What I, again, want you to strive for is what brings meaning and joy in your life. And then when you have to talk with us in healthcare, if you bring that forth, you will bring who you are, you will bring your family to the table, and despite maybe the outcomes you didn't want, maybe that family, when they have bereavement issues, will say, well, gosh, Dad, he did it his own way even though I disagreed with him. And you will have less grief and loss. When somebody dies in the ICU, there is profound, compounded grief and loss because we give you so much responsibility to make decisions that may or may not make medical sense. So give your family, give yourself the gift of the conversation so that you can meet us head on through the maze of healthcare.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
Please join us weekly for the 12th District with yours truly, Carrie Condata. Check your channel guide for times or go to ncwlife.com for details.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
This is information for the person that is going to be designated as your healthcare agent, and we'll talk a little bit more about that document. But this is a kind of something you would include so they understand what that role is, especially if it's like your second healthcare agent on your list and they aren't present. It kind of outlines that role. And then Jenny already talked about the CPR guide, so that's there. I'm going to go through this in detail in just right now. And then after that is this evaluation, which we take very seriously. So please take some time, help us to perfect this so that we can continue to communicate effectively to others who come next after you. But we've got more time for that. So this first section gives, this first page is really an overview of what we've already talked about. So it's really kind of the idea of the role of a healthcare agent. Remember, an advance directive is a form. A healthcare agent is a person, or a power of attorney for healthcare is a person. This form, the first section, the first form, is called a durable power of attorney for healthcare. Some people go to an attorney and get this done, and maybe you did and maybe you didn't. A lot of people may think they have it done, and actually what you might have is a durable power of attorney for finances, which will not inform healthcare decisions in the hospital. So if you have a living will or some sort of document that an attorney helped you with, you should double check and make sure that it covers the healthcare agent. And then also please reflect on what we've shared with you today to make sure it reflects your wishes. Because often the attorneys, when you sit with them, they'll give you so much information, and you're probably thinking about the house and the estate and who's going to have to pay the bills, and you're not thinking about backing that up into the intensive care unit and who's going to make those decisions. So that whole section that's covered with an attorney about the role of a healthcare agent usually doesn't cover some of the things that we've talked about. So the first, I should back up a little bit. This document is part of a statewide initiative called Honoring Choices Pacific Northwest. I have the honor of being faculty on that team, and so throughout the state we are working on making this a universal document. There are many healthcare organizations throughout Washington state who have adopted this, including Confluence Health as our healthcare directive. The reason we did it is because it took all that legalese that's in the forms that attorneys use, and those are usually typically at a 13th grade level, which maybe if you kind of flounder through it, you might be able to get there. But it doesn't help with conversation. So we took that information, we scaled it down to a 6th grade level so that we could all do this on our own, and we put it in this first section of the document. So most of the things that are covered in an intensive advance directive that talks about things like persistent vegetative state and things like that have been scaled down and can be interpreted in this first document. So the most important document that you could complete if you decide to go forward with a document is the first one, which is pages 1 through 9. And it's the durable power of attorney for healthcare. So I'm going to go through that form for just a second with you so you kind of know what's in there. Yeah, I think you can go, I think I already covered that part, so you can go forward one more. I'll just leave it there. Okay. So this first section, and I'm fading out on you, but I'll talk loud. It goes through what Jenny talked about. So that living well question, it's got a checklist of things that are important to you. If you're going to use this document and fill it out, feel free to elaborate on there. For instance, it talks about something important to me would be to be free of minimal pain. So maybe that's true for you, but maybe also what you want to do is be as alert as possible. So sometimes when I help people fill this out, they put, be free from minimal pain, but keep me as alert as possible. Or maybe the thing that talks about milestones, there's something that says it would be important for me to see my family reach milestones. So for some people that might be, you know, in 2 years my daughter's going to graduate from college. If at all possible, I'd like to be there. And so it's putting maybe some of those things down in this section. But even equally important is if you think about what a good day is for you, like Jenny was talking about, giving us some information in this section, fill it in a little bit. A good day for me is getting up. For me, I love to wake up. I live up on Badger Mountain. So for me, a good day is to be able to get up and go feed the chickens. And I love to be able to herd the dogs over with me. And I love to be able to walk through the snow right now. I love to be able to snowshoe up there. And right now, I'm still raising my children. So a good day for me is to be able to mentally participate in the rearing of my children. Now, there's some other things for me that are kind of negotiable about that right now because I have children. When they're 25, that might not be as critical, but right now, to mentally parent my children is very important to me. And so that's what's in my healthcare directive about what's important and what a good day is. So this next page, if you go to, don't have glasses, so I'll hope for the best. Page 2, that shouldn't be too difficult to figure out, second page. It talks about where you would prefer to die if you had the chance. So a lot of what we're trying to talk about is way upstream. But this is kind of those kind of final moments or the time before that, and it asks if you'd prefer to die at home, if care could be available, or in a hospital or facility, or it doesn't matter to me, it's up to my healthcare agent, and you could check that option. And then it goes into this religious, spiritual, or personal beliefs. So for some people, this section about religious beliefs, that might be so simple because it's formalized for you. It's something that's foremost in your everyday life, is kind of this organized belief system, and maybe you'd want to translate there. But for others, it might be more like, how do you just make decisions in your family? Maybe it isn't this formal religious belief system, but maybe it's, you know what? I want my children together. When we make a big decision about what the Thanksgiving meal is going to be, this is how we do it. We all get together, and you know, Susie, she's the oldest. She's the one that makes the decision, and after Susie's figured it out, it all falls in line. So maybe how you make decisions and how beliefs are formed in your family are what you could be putting in this section, because that's equally important for us to know as we're helping you decide. And why that would be important is, as Jenny was giving that scenario of like in the intensive care unit. So let's say all this work was done, and there you are with your family, and I'm helping you as a social worker in the hospital, and you're dealing with this terrible crisis that you were unprepared for. And we're trying to figure out what she would want. Maybe you forgot the conversation. What would she want? I don't know. I'll be able to pull this document up and say, you know what? One of the things I read was that it was really important for Susie to be involved. And you'd go, oh, you're right. Susie, can we call Susie? Can Susie be involved? And now we can bring Susie into it. So it's those kind of things that we'll be able to pull up in a care conference that might be helpful for us, may be helpful for you to kind of remind you as you get to that hopeful never crisis state. The other section, before I go on to the next question, I want to bring up that the role of a healthcare agent, we're talking about end of life, but there's some studies that show about when a healthcare agent is engaged in the hospital that are unrelated to end of life. So in the intensive care unit, 90% of the people that are in the intensive care unit lack decisional capacity for some time during their stay. That may be because of those severe injuries that we talked about, but it may be because they are intubated and they've got all kinds of medications so that that doesn't become such a struggle, and so they are temporarily lacking decisional capacity. It may be that you had knee surgery and you got all kinds of medications and you had the anesthesia and you didn't come out of it right. And you're gonna come out of it right, but for 3 days, we've got to make some critical decisions, and you're not gonna be able to make those decisions. And there are some people who are maybe more advanced in age and get in the hospital and experience what we call hospital delirium, which is you've been there for a few days and whoa, everything doesn't seem the same anymore. It's usually people who are dealing with more advanced age, but that time, when they get back out of the hospital, it clears. But there is this time period while you're hospitalized. So I talked about 90% of the people in the ICU. 40% of the people in the hospital in general, in some time during their hospital stay, lack decisional capacity. So again, that healthcare agent would be involved in those kind of decisions. So it's not just end of life, it could be incrementally throughout a hospital stay.
Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure. Are you wanting high-speed internet but don't have access to PUD fiber? Try Sky-Fi high-speed wireless internet from LocalTel. Call 888-8888 today. Pybus University, where learning is a lifelong adventure.
And so the next page goes through that scenario that Jenny talked about, that sudden event that caused you to be unable to communicate and not know who you are, who you're with. Is a very powerful statement, and everybody should be able to think about that and relate to that. Even my son is 16. He just went through, well, he's going to be 16. He'll be proud that I accidentally called him 16. He went through the driver's ed class. They talked about organ donors. He came home that night, and whoa, did he get a lot more than what they gave him. But you know, part of that was me talking to him, honey, what if you hit a car and you didn't know who you are or who you're with? And I kind of talked through this scenario with him. And boy, he's a very creative young man, so we talked about a lot of things that he wouldn't want. But this scenario is relatable to everyone. The next scenario talks about CPR. This CPR decision isn't about if you collapse in Safeway, because we know, as we talked about, and a lot of people have had it, you collapse in Safeway, probably chances are good someone's going to jump on you and start pumping. This scenario is really, the CPR decision is what you would want if you're hospitalized and unable to speak for yourself, or maybe if you're in a nursing home and unable to speak for yourself. These are CPR decisions related to medical care in some sort of facility. The next one talks about pregnancy, which in Washington state and several states throughout the country, if you have do not use CPR or a DNR code. It's temporarily suspended during pregnancy, and some other decisions may be temporarily suspended. If that's important to you, I can talk to you a little bit more about that later. And then there's a section for additional directions. So if you heard something or you read something or you go home and you talk more about this and you'd like to add more information, put it in here. There's some people who write all kinds of details in here about, what you want us to know, what's important to you, maybe who to call. It could be, there's some folks like the 5 wishes, and the 5 wishes is a difficult document to translate sometimes in emergency medical care, but what it does do is give some really good conversational pieces. And so you might look through that document and put a few more information in here under additional directions. Feel free to write whatever's important to you in that section. Anytime you do this document, if you find a section that doesn't make sense to you, like you're never going to get pregnant, draw a line through that. Or if you're not going to add any additional directions, draw a line through that. I think I got my pagination off here. Okay, so 6, 7. Yeah, okay. So here's where you designate on page 6, your healthcare agent. So we ask for your first and primary healthcare agent, and that might be your spouse, it might be your oldest child. That's where you're going to put that first person that you want to have contacted. However, if you ever travel anywhere with that person, you should always have a second person listed. Again, because of that idea of a sudden accident or illness. And we want that second person listed here, and even a third person is ideal. In the hospital, we're going to contact that first person, but if we've got some critical decisions to make in the next 24 hours, we might need to go to that second person. Usually we will be able to get a hold of that first person. It's most important that that person can be reached by phone. If somebody is really important to you, you trust them 100%, and they live in Arizona, that's probably okay as long as you know they're going to be involved. The ideal is it's somebody local that can come to the hospital and have face-to-face conversations. But if you know someone, or if you're helping others do this, and it has to be someone out of the area, most important is it's someone that we can contact. So any questions about how to fill out that part so far? The next page goes through some important things. It has this, if my spouse, sorry, it's not on there yet. If my spouse is my durable power of attorney for healthcare or my healthcare agent, and we get a divorce, I still want that person to be my healthcare agent. So when I first went through this, I thought, what? If I divorce him, I don't know why I divorced him, but I'm pretty sure I don't want him making medical decisions. Well, here's the behind-the-scenes reasons why we put that in there. Maybe we should turn the recording off right now. No, I'm just kidding. Some people have to make a decision to legally separate from their marriage for insurance and financial reasons. So it may be that you are not going to be able to get a certain amount of coverage for something in the future, and you legally separate or divorce. I had a couple that had done this. Husband at age like 46, I think he was, had a stroke, a very severe stroke, and could no longer care for himself, could no longer earn an income, and there was a lot of decisions to have to be made, and they legally separated. They became divorced. But this was an important clause for them, because it meant that that person is still who I want to make those decisions for me. If he were to have another stroke and not able to communicate, we would be able to refer to this document. And then this next one says, if there isn't anybody, I understand that probably a guardian will be assigned to you. We really hope to avoid this, and I'll tell you, it's a terrible process. It takes months. Often in the hospital, people are stuck in the hospital with care and interventions that they may never have wanted because we don't have a healthcare agent designated. Getting a guardianship in place is cumbersome, and then it's a foreigner. It's a caring person who's been trained, but it's somebody else coming in to make those decisions as a guardian. And then there's this witness page. So in Washington State in January of 2017, the law changed where you can have 2 different ways of legally verifying this document. So on page 8 and 9, it's an either or. So on page 8, it talks about the witness. And so the witness for a document, you have to have 2 of them. They're witnessing your signature. So they're not just witnessing that you're a great person or anything like that. They're not even witnessing the contents of the document. They're witnessing your signature. So those people, it outlines who they are, but they can't stand to inherit from you. They can't be your durable power of attorney for healthcare. They have to be over the age of 18. And Yeah, those are the main things. They can now be employees of a healthcare organization where you receive your healthcare, and that's a new big change. So Jenny and I can sign for you as witnesses. If you decide to do this document and bring it to your physician, they can sign that for you, and so too can somebody else in their clinic. You have my contact information. I'll tell you more about how to follow up on that. So you can do, it also often works well for people to just pick a neighbor, because neighbors typically are not going to inherit from you. They may not be your healthcare agent, so you could use a neighbor. So then, or you can take it and have it notarized. And less so now, banks are not notarizing anymore, but some of our banks will notarize. You can go to UPS, and for $10, they'll notarize it for you. There's other ways to get it notarized. So it's an either or to officially document this. And that is the first and most important section, and that's what we hope that you get done and you get into your medical record. The second part of the document is the advance directive, and so that is the legalese. This is a very important document for some people. It gives them comfort and reassurance. It also goes into a few things that aren't emergent decisions. Things like, do you want a feeding tube to help you with feeding? Do you want, what kind of breathing devices do you want on an ongoing basis? I have 2 decision cards back there. If you decide, they're little blue and yellow forms, if you decide you really want to complete this part of the document, there are some what we call decision aids over there, and you could do that. The difference with this healthcare directive is it has totally different signature requirements. So and when you get to the signature page on the healthcare directive, which is page 3 of 3, it outlines what the signature requirements are. They not only, it's all those previous ones, but it cannot be someone who works for a place where you receive health care or physical care. So if you're living in a nursing home, they can't do that. It can't be anybody who works for your healthcare organization. And it has to be somebody who's willing to say, yes, they are competent and able to sign this. And so sometimes that's a little bit like a neighbor gets a little bit nervous sometimes when you're telling them to commit to something like that. And so then you need 2 witnesses for that. On the bottom of that page, or the back page, there's something called a wallet card. I've provided for you in your packet a wallet card. So once you commit to completing an advance directive, whether it's the one that we provided or you have a living will or some other document that you decide to complete, please fill out a wallet card and put it in your wallet, because it helps those emergency providers know where to find that information to contact. For instance, if you completed this, got it into Confluence Health, they'd know to look up Confluence Health and call that, and they'd be able to get the information. It also gives a spot for you to put who your healthcare agent is and who to contact. Also in your packet is a stamped envelope. So if you decide to just complete this, you got it, you're going on your own, you're going to do this, please get us back a copy. You can do that via this stamped envelope, and it'll get into medical records, and then we'll get it into your medical chart. So I'll talk a little bit more. So next steps. Obviously, we want you to talk to your healthcare agent, whoever that person may be. Maybe you've rethought who that might be. Maybe you didn't realize you should have a second or third person. So really consider who those people would be and talk to them. If that seems like a huge task and you're not sure how to proceed next, we have facilitators like I talked, and so if you were to call me and say, listen, I think I need some help kind of filling this out, or I don't know if my daughter can really handle talking to me about this, would you mind helping us talk about that? I can help coordinate that. I might have somebody within your clinic. If you're in one of our clinics, I can have the nurses that I know that are trained do that, or I can do that for you in my office. And
Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life Community Calendar at ncwlife.com.